Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. Again, as the tradition, let's start from the Kursk Oblast. So recently Ukraine took more ground on the northeast, kicking Russians out from at least 4 of the villages. At the same time, Russia does everything they can to stop the advancement of Ukrainian army, but what they were able to do is just to slow down the Ukrainian offensive. In many of the places Ukraine still moves forward. Like for example, it happened yesterday in Martinovka direction. There Ukraine took this part of the ground and moved towards Kruglik. This village is now in the gray zone. Also, the fighting is spread towards the village of Pushkarnaya. What's interesting about this case that it's the eastern front lines of the Kursk battlefields. Here you can see Sudzha, and Russia sent lots of the reinforcements to stop the Ukrainian advancement, especially in this part. They also used this highway to send more reinforcements, but still for now it seems like Ukraine has advantage over the Russian army, even in those conditions. It also means that the Kursk operation is not yet over. Ukraine has big plans for it. Yes, we understand that for Ukraine it will be hard to return for the previous pace of the high-intensity offensive operations in Kursk, but what the Ukrainian army does there is great. Guys, it's still hard for me to judge the real goals of this Kursk offensive, but from the military point of view, from the tactics, I think that Ukraine is really successful. And we have more details about this particular offensive, that Ukraine definitely creates the risk for the Russian army of being encircled on the eastern side of Sudzha. Again, Sudzha is over here, so the Russian group is definitely in danger. Ukraine took the ground, and I think, according to other analytics, even more ground than it is shown on this picture, and definitely Ukraine has all of the chances to encircle Russian group. As it done, for example, in Malaya Lokhna village, then the large number of the Russian soldiers were trapped, but finally they managed to escape during the night time with the losses. Guys, I put all of the links for the original information for those analytics in the video description just below. Also below you may find my Telegram channel where I shared that information at first. So Russians were trapped in Malaya Lokhna, they escaped, but because of it, Ukraine moved and took quite a lot of territory. Before I thought that Ukraine would move to encircle the Russian forces, but it seems like the Russian army also escaped from all of those settlements, 4 of the settlements. But including Malaya Lokhna, it's 5, and totally Ukraine controls around 100 of the villages and small towns of the Kursk Oblast. And there will be more because Russia is cut from the south of the Kursk Oblast. The river is basically the obstacle for the Russian supplies, and the Russians cannot stay there for a very long time. They should go out from that entire region. There is also a move in the corner of a town. Ukraine controls the part of it, but also Ukraine got some of the ground on the northern side, completely cutting the railroad connection for the Russian armed forces. Well, the good thing for Ukraine would be to cut also the road connection to Kornova, and by doing so, Ukraine potentially might encircle the city. Or it's better to say the town because it's not that big, but still it's the obstacle for Ukraine to move ahead towards Rilsk, for example. The problem is that because of this war storage, Ukraine has to concentrate the forces in kind of the narrow direction. That's why Ukraine now tries to make one more vector of attack towards Kornova. Well, at least we have some positive news. I thought that this operation will go much faster, but still in general the situation is much better for Ukraine in this region than for the Russian army. My friends, if you like the job that I do daily on YouTube, you may also consider supporting me on Patreon. The link for my Patreon page is available just in the video description below. Thanks so much for maintaining my motivation. Putin commented the events in the Kursk Oblast again. He said that the aim for the Russian army is to occupy more ground in Ukraine. He openly says like that. Well, he didn't say the term occupy, he said liberate, but we know what Russia is really doing in Ukraine. He said that Ukraine thought that Russia would withdraw the forces from the Ukrainian front lines to protect its own territory, but according to the Putin's logic, Russia will not do it. The priority for Russia, he says, is Donbass. He condemned the Ukrainian special military operation of Kursk and also shared his wishes to the Russian citizens who were forced to leave their homes. And there are 200,000 people who were forced to do it. 200,000. The number is really astonishing, but for the Russian big news propaganda, it's not even the news. As well as for Putin, it means that he doesn't care about the lives of his own people of Russia. Alright, from the Kursk operation, let's go down to Pokrovsk, Ukrainian front lines, and there the situation miraculously was improved for Ukrainian army in this particular place. For more detailed reviews, let's go to the deep state military map. I'm speaking about the Galitsynivka village, so let's check out the timeline. It was yesterday and it is today. So Russians were forced to leave this area. It's kind of interesting because it is really a high ground. So I would say if Russians are there, it's easier for them to maintain that hill. But for Ukraine, it's very hard to advance towards that hill. Nevertheless, you see that Russians were repelled from the place, maybe with the help of the drones or artillery systems. For the first time, I see how Russia retreats in this region. But nevertheless, Russia has more of the resources. Now the ratio, if we speak about the soldiers, is 1 to 5. So per each Ukrainian soldier, there are 5 Russians. According to some of the Western military analytics, for example from Forbes, and I agree with that. I told you, my friends, in my recent video that it's the plan of the Russian army to encircle this large group of the Ukrainian forces. So Pokrovsk is more to the northwest, not far away from this area, but Russia splits their attack vectors. Now they move from Krasnohorivka and also they move from Mamrik village from the north. And here are some of the hills, the high elevation, and this is the lower ground, which could be encircled really. Russia doesn't want to go towards the hills from the lower ground. That's why they advance from this part, just to minimize the advantage of the Ukrainian army. And you know, they started this movement right after they occupied Krasnohorivka. So Krasnohorivka was more important for the Russian army for this big operation rather than to advance to Kurakhove, for example. So how many soldiers does Ukraine have in this area? Up to 2,000. And according to the rumors, Ukraine started to withdraw some of the forces from the place. At the same time, it's really hard to confirm this information of what is really happening on the ground. But the situation for Ukraine out there, I would say, is kind of tricky, dangerous, and indeed, it's the goal of the Russian army. We may clearly see, judging on the frontline picture, that it's the main goal of the Russian army, again the attack with the Klaus tactics. So that's what the mainstream media says. Hundreds of Ukrainian troops are about to get surrounded. The big screaming headline, but behind it there is nothing for now. Russia is not yet encircling this area and Ukraine has all of the way out from the place. So this is a fake article, I would say, for now. But the situation is definitely concerning there. And this might happen in the coming weeks. The Ukrainian military command should consider this possibility, and I'm sure that they are considering it. But for September's the 3rd, no, it's not yet the condition. But you know, guys, for the last 24 hours, there were no successful attacks for Russia in Pokrovsk direction. It is awesome. However, the Russian army moved a little in New York, so it was yesterday and it is today. Plus, the attacks are happening on the south part of Donetsk Oblast in Vuhledar. With the new forces, Russia tries to advance to Vuhledar and also from Pavlovka. The most of the attacks were repelled by the Ukrainian defense forces. But if we check out the satellite image, you may see that there is a huge fire in Vuhledar. It means that Russia uses artillery systems a lot. They want to propel forward very fast. But I see that it's not happening as fast as the one, but there's the huge risk now for Vuhledar. Russia will advance also from this direction. I can see it, judging on this gray zone. Russia also bombs Vuhledar. I have the video, but I'll not publish it on this platform, of how they demolish the remains of the town. For Ukraine, actually, it's very important to keep Vuhledar because there are no any villages in the close-by perspective. So if Russia takes Vuhledar, they'll take this entire ground. Putin arrived to Mongolia yesterday with his official visit. As you can see, the local police immediately arrested the Russian leader. Yeah, it's just not funny joke from my side. Actually, it's the standard escort to the local president's palace. Mongolia is the country with a Rome Statute legislation, so it is obligated to arrest the international criminals according to the warrant of the International Court. But instead, they give those criminals flowers. Well, I guess it was one of the main reasons of Putin's visit. He wants to show that the International Criminal Court is just a joke. That's why he chose Mongolia, the country that is very dependent on Russia as well as on China. During Putin's visit, Mongolian side already said that they're looking for lowering the price for the Russian oil, gas, and they're also interested in the new projects with Russia. What can I say? Money rules. I think that after all, commercial and corporations win over logic. As an example, I always tell about the China economy boost, which happened just because of the Western countries, or it's better to say Western businesses, which invest billions and billions of dollars into the Chinese economy. And now everything is made in China because it was cheaper by the time. And here they're talking about the gas projects, and they don't care about the legislation of the International Criminal Court. So the idea of Putin is to ruin the global stability, to show that organizations are not doing their job properly. And definitely it is like that. We may say that the United Nations is just useless, the International Criminal Court is out of the tools to reach Putin, even in the country which follows the legislation. Basically, this entire situation shows that the world didn't change a lot since the Second World War. Then all of those international institutions were just finished by Hitler. Here Putin does the same job, escalating and trying to expand his influence. But something tells me that after all we're gonna see Putin in Hog's court or in the grave. There's also the variant for both of those outcomes. So what's the circumstances for Mongolia could be, because they didn't follow the rule of the International Criminal Court. I think there will be no any circumstances, which will show that organization is really not that important. So unfortunately for now, Putin reached his goal in Mongolia, but it's not for a long time. In the long-term perspective, the Russian regime has no future. Also, Russia boosts the cooperation with their allies, long-term partners like Iran. According to the latest information, Iran finally decided to transfer the ballistic missiles to the Russian army. Well, actually, if we speak about the last couple of years, I see this information already for the third time, so we're gonna see how it develops in the nearby future, because two previous reports were not truthful. Russia hasn't obtained those missiles yet. However, Russia got the North Korean missiles, which they already used against Ukraine. Also, Russia develops the new types of the gliding bombs with a range up to 75 kilometers. The Russian aviation bomb FAB-500 will be equipped with a new gliding unit, which will gradually increase the characteristics and the precision of the Russian bombs. For this reason, Ukraine absolutely should have the permission to strike the Russian military airfields, otherwise Russia will take more ground in Ukraine and they will be finally able to regain the control over the Kursk Oblast. If we speak about the game changer, the aviation gliding bombs for Russia were definitely and are definitely the game changer. They play a great role on the front lines, destroying Ukrainian positions. Unfortunately, Ukraine has JDAMs, but much less compared to the Russian gliding bombs, and Russia also has many of the airplanes compared to Ukraine. Alright, one more helicopter crashed in Russia, Mi-8 once again. It crashed in Buryatia region. However, everyone on board survived. The search and rescue team reached the crash site and they evacuated the persons. Some of them were delivered to hospitals. The biggest Russian oil refinery in the Moscow Oblast stopped its operation because of the Ukrainian drone strike yesterday. Yes, the drone hit was very small, but it touched a very sensitive and important equipment of the entire facility. So Ukraine knows the exact weak spots of those refineries. Russia also develops the flying dildo, and they call it the interceptor of the enemy drones. Basically, it's the drone looks like the flying, yes, I already told you about it, and it goes, strikes the drone and hits it with a kind of the precision, like the air defense missile. But it's really hard to judge the effectiveness of this air defense drone because the full video hasn't been showed yet. This is the last image, and where's the kaboom of the drone, where's the shrapnel which hits the other drone. It's not yet been showed officially, so the drone may just overfly this one and kaput. President of Taiwan said that China should look for taking back its lands from the Russian side, rather than to escalate the situation with Taiwan, and indeed the parts of the Chinese land were transferred to the Russian Empire in 19th century. And definitely China shows those lands as the part of China even in their schools. Well, I think that this process is imminent. China will take the part of Russia, and there are lots of the Chinese already living in those lands of Russia. So maybe in a few years China will finally make it. They need more space, they need more resources, so then Russia will be weak under the sanctions, China will take it. I would say that the current war in Ukraine is kind of profitable for China after all. Good news about the air defense systems, in this case Patriot. Romania voted for transferring of the Patriot system to Ukraine, but it is not a single track. No, it includes also radars and the control centers, plus many of the launchers, up to 8. It is absolutely awesome deal with Romania. Hopefully our Romanian friends will do the transfer very soon. For such a small country, it's a huge step in helping Ukraine. Absolutely tremendous step, I would say. Guys, there were also some other news, but I want to make this video a little shorter, so I'm gonna speak about those a little later with a new update, which we have almost every day. And for now, please don't forget to press your huge like to this video. By doing so, it helps me a lot. As usual, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are and have a great time.